If you're having a hard time getting your voicemails returned, it's not unique to you. Probably one of the most important things that we teach salespeople that they find the most valuable is this common skill, how to leave a voicemail that you know will be returned. Think about this. If you're not getting voicemails returned, then you're not having as many sales conversations as you need, which means that you're not putting as many people into the pipeline as would be beneficial to you, which means that you don't have as many people that can close at the end of the month or end of the quarter. So getting good at getting your voicemails returned has a direct and immediate impact on the amount of people in your pipeline, which has a direct and an immediate impact on whether or not you hit quota. So today we're going to spend some time specifically on how to leave a voicemail message that you know will be returned. So let's get started. So starting back from where we were talking about before, the first question is, does voicemail matter, or why does it matter? Period. Well, it's a pretty obvious answer. Think about this. So let's just draw this out. So here's you. This is you in your tie, your nice scarf. You're wearing your best clothes because you're in sales. And here is your target customer. It's a doctor or a CIO or the head of purchasing that you're trying to get a hold of. Let's call those, obviously, the decision maker. The decision maker you can represent as a person, or you can also represent it as a bag of money, because that is really what you're going after, or probably more accurately, multiple bags of money. So you got to remember, the decision maker is the person that can either put you in touch with that money or stop you. And voicemail is the thing sitting between you and the decision maker. And if you're not able to get your voicemails returned, if every time you call you're blocked by the red brick wall of voicemail, then you'll never have access to the revenue that you need. However, if you can get good at getting your voicemails returned, you have access to that money and you can hold it in your hands. So let's keep that in mind as we draw out what specifically about voicemail works and doesn't work. So sticking on why voicemail matters, let's sort of rearrange this drawing a little bit. Okay, so here's what we want to ask. Does voicemail always not work? Or is it just when you call that it doesn't work? Because a lot of people say voicemail is no good, or I can't get voicemails returned, or I hate voicemail. But the fact is that people leave voicemails all the time, and people call them back. In fact, I was at the gym today, and I was thinking about this presentation, and somebody was in the locker room, and I heard them calling somebody back and saying, "Hey, I saw you called. I'm sorry I missed your call. Call me back." And what they had done is they'd looked at their call and their cell phone and seen the caller ID of someone who called who didn't even leave a message, and they got a call back. So obviously people call other people back even without voicemail. The trick is to figure out what's going on that's different. So let's look at who is the person calling, what's the result, and why. So again, let's say your boss calls. Do they get a call back? Yes. Your peer, your spouse, your friend, the dentist calls and leaves a voicemail. Do they get a call back? Yes. What about customers and vendors? Obviously, if they leave a voicemail, they get a call back. Even a reporter gets a call back. The person who doesn't get a call back is you. So the first thing we got to remember is that it's not voicemail that doesn't work. It's the way we're using voicemail. So if we can study how voicemail is being used when it is effective, maybe we can mimic some of those things. So let's head down that path a little bit. So why are you not getting called back and other people are? Well, first of all, these people have relationships. They're known, right? Secondly, they know enough about the person they're leaving the voicemail with, or the person that's getting the voicemail knows enough about the person leaving the voicemail that they can see that there's something positive in it for them. They're going to call them back because there's something that they need or want, or good's going to happen. The other thing is that it's timely. You can get a call from your good friend or from even a customer or your boss, and it's just not timely or important enough for you to call them back right away, or if at all. So if it's some of those things, then they get calls back. And of course, the last thing is that they're responsible. They have some kind of responsibility, so they're going to call back because of that. But when you call and leave a cold call voicemail, and you try to sell them something, it doesn't hit any of these things. Even though, by the way, we think, well, we're leaving a message that sounds like there should be something positive in it for them. 99 times out of 100, we have no idea with this person if we've got something that's positive for them or not. And it's very presumptive of us to try that. So we don't have a relationship. We don't know if we can help them. It's usually not very timely. And they don't have any responsibility to us. So no wonder they're not returning our calls. They're returning other people's calls, but not ours. All right, so let's talk about why that is. Well, the first thing to understand is that just like in the world of diamonds, there are 4 different things that make a difference in terms of whether or not someone will call you back. So in the world of diamonds, you've heard of something called the 4 C's, right? What these are color, cut, clarity, and carat size. So depending on how good you are on the scale of bad to excellent on each 4 of those things, you have a good, meaning a valuable, or not good diamond. So if you have a diamond that's fairly small, but it has brilliant color, it's got incredible clarity, and the cut is perfect, it can be a very expensive diamond, even though it's very tiny. And vice versa, you can have a very large diamond, a 2-carat diamond, but its cut is terrible, it's not shiny, it doesn't reflect light, it looks terrible to the trained eye, and it's worth almost nothing. So you really have to be good at a lot of these things. You can't just be good at one of them. It's really no different for voicemail. There's 4 things that matter, and you got to do as good as you can on all of those. So there are 2 that you can't do much about, but they're the first 2, and they are, do I know you? Do we have some kind of relationship? And is there something positive in it for me? There's not a lot you can do about both of those, but they do matter for getting your voicemail return. The next 2 you can do something about. Are you calling at a time that's hectic, or calling at a time they can call you back? And how's your message? Is it formulaic in the way that we're going to teach you here, or is it terrible? If it's terrible, then you're not going to get a call back. And if it's done the way that we're going to teach you here, you're going to get a call back. Keep in mind that these 2 things, which I'll color here in yellow, are the things that you can do something about. They're really the 2 of the 4 quadrants that people use when they decide whether or not to call you back that you can do something about when you're cold calling. You really can't do much about whether or not they know you or if there's something positive in it for them. But these are the 2 that we're going to focus on because they'll get your calls returned. Because if you score very high on these 2, then the other 2 aren't going to matter. And the other 2, I should say, they are things you can do about later. And especially if you're leaving a voicemail someone that you do know but maybe hasn't returned your calls, if you can focus on your relationship and making sure that you're talking about something that you know is positive for them, then later on, after the cold call, you can use those 2 things to make sure you get your voicemail return. So these are the 4 things that matter. And what we're going to focus on right now are the 2 that we can do something about, no matter if we know them or not. The one thing I want to point out about message, and we're going to spend some time on that here, is that most of these are 0 to 10. Message is actually negative 10 to positive 10. Because if you do a bad job with message, you'll actually get negative points. And it really doesn't matter if they know you or not, or if you've called it at the perfect time or not. You really got to do very good with that. You got to nail that. Otherwise, you're going to fail pretty miserably when it comes to getting your voicemails returned. Okay, so the first part that we want to focus on is when you call them. You can call them at a time that's hectic, or you can call them at a time that's good for you. There are what we call golden times to call and golden times to leave voicemail. There happen to be 4. So let's look at a typical week. Let's draw a week here. We'll do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we'll split up morning and afternoon by doing noon in the middle. So let's put noon in the middle. And then let's move these golden hours for voicemail on the grid so you can see them, you can visualize it. So Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Thursday afternoon, and Friday morning are times that are great. In fact, these mornings, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, before 9 a.m., and Thursday afternoon after 3 p.m. So if you'll call and leave voicemails for folks on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, or Friday before 9, Thursday after 3, you're more likely than any other time to get your voicemail returned. Remember, there's 4 things that matter. One of them is how hectic their day is. And we don't know why, other than to say one would assume that most people aren't hectic during those times. But we do know that in years and years and years of doing this, in industry after industry, with salesperson after salesperson, when voicemails are left Monday, Tuesday, or Friday morning before 9, voicemails, or Thursday afternoon after 3, you're much more likely to get them returned. So you want to score high on that element of the 4 things that matter for getting your voicemail return. Those are the times you want to call. Now, the most important thing, what to say when you call. So let's focus on that. Okay, now message. Now, as I said before, message is absolutely the most important thing that you can focus on because it's what almost all of us are doing wrong. So let's start by looking at the do nots. There are 4 major do nots that you have to be sure you're not doing when you leave a message. And the first one is you can't sound like a salesperson, particularly the salesperson that you see drawn there, because that's the image that people have in their head when you leave the wrong kind of message. The second thing is that you don't want to make this a one-way street of information. This means that you don't want to provide data that's only going their way and not coming back. The third thing is that you never want to provide enough information for them to make a decision. And the last thing is you don't want to sound like everyone else. So let's go through all 4 of those. First things first, salespeople are very me. Duke did this study some number of years ago where they talked to 13,000 decision makers. And they said, what's the number one thing you think of when you think of a salesperson? And the number one response by far, well over 60% of respondents said a time waster. They think of a salesperson as someone who's wasting their time. So if you sound like a salesperson, they're not going to return your call, because who would return the call to somebody who's going to waste their time? So there are a lot of things to do, and we'll talk about what they are to make sure you don't sound like sales. But the easiest thing to remember, and probably the most common mistake, is to leave your phone number twice. Nobody but salespeople leave their phone number twice. So don't do that. That's the first thing you can cut out. The next thing is to be careful that your message isn't very me-oriented. So don't talk about how many awards you've won or how great your company is or what the new press release about you guys was or how you're the new rep taking over somebody else's territory or how you have a new product coming out or how you know that they read your webinar and you want to follow up with them. That's just all sales stuff that everybody says that's going to throw up the red flags right away. The next thing is to make sure this isn't a one-way street of information. If you leave information on their voicemail and you don't, and it's just a stream of information, it doesn't give them the opportunity to ask questions. It doesn't give them the opportunity to clarify, to give you objections. You can't respond to them. It's wrong in every way. Sales is a relationship and a conversation. And if you're trying to sell over voicemail or making a sales pitch in any way over voicemail, it's a one-way stream of information, and it's going to get you nowhere. The next thing is, I'm going to skip over the decision-making in a second, and I'm going to go to the next thing, which is the Mad Lib version of voicemail. I guarantee you, if you were to record your voicemail and put it on a website and ask 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 other salespeople to leave their voicemails, and you could compare them, almost all the voicemails sound the same. It's very me-focused. It's about a white paper or a customer or how you're taking over someone else's territory, or it's how you've won this certain award or how you're working with a neighboring company or you're working with their competitor. All that stuff, it's almost like somebody wrote a voicemail somewhere and you just filled in the blanks. And when people hear those, they're so used to that, they just hit delete right away. And they hit delete right away because it's a waste of their time and they don't want to hear it. So don't make your messages like everyone else's. You're not a commercial. You don't write commercials for a living. You're probably not very good at it anyway, and you shouldn't turn this into a commercial because that's what everyone else tries to do, and they're not good at it. Neither am I, and neither are you. All right, the final thing, a really, really important do not here, is never give them enough information to make a decision. So here's what this means. If you provide enough information for them to make a decision about whether or not they should use your product or whether or not they should be interested in your product or service or whether or not they should call you back ever or whether or not they should look into your company, then they feel like they've gotten the information they need to make a decision, and they'll make a decision. And guess what the decision is going to be? The decision is no. So if you say, call me back if you're interested in this, or we provide these kinds of things, or we help people with this, they think to themselves, okay, well, I know what you do and I have no interest in that. And they tell you no by not calling you back. And then when you call back, they're thinking to themselves, why are you calling back? You already told me what you do and I don't want to talk to you. And the problem is that it's the permanent decision. So now you've ruined your chance to ever talk to that person again because you've told them what you think was a good description of what you do. They think it was a good description too, and they want nothing to do with you. I mean, among the other things, they didn't get to bring up an objection. They didn't ask any questions. This wasn't a conversation. This wasn't your best sales job you've ever done. There's no real such thing as somebody buying from you after hearing from you for 15 seconds or 20 seconds or a minute. But that's what you're trying to do on voicemail when you leave these decisions on their voicemail. So the only decision they ought to be able to make from your voicemail is, should I call them back today? Not even should I call them back ever. So you want to make sure that your voicemails don't contain a lot of decision-making information, or they're going to make these decisions. So those are the 4 do nots. And I recognize and I appreciate, and I'll point out right away, that leaves most people saying, so what does that leave me? What do we have left? And I get that. I'm going to show you what you have left, but I understand and I appreciate it, and hopefully you appreciate that I'm asking you to not do all the stuff you normally do, because it's that stuff that's getting your voicemails not returned. Again, they don't know who you are. There's nothing positive in it for them, and they're hearing these 4 things go on, and you sound like every other salesperson, and they're giving you negative points. So when they add up all the numbers, and they call me at a time that I'm too busy, I have no idea who this person is. I don't believe them about the positive things. I don't even want to hear it because they sound like everyone else. The message is terrible. Negative points. Do not return that voicemail. Never call that person ever again. So we got to be really careful about that. So those are the 4 things. Now let's kind of wind you into how you can fix that. What things you can do so we can overcome this. Okay? Let's do that. Okay, so here is a graph of the number of books or articles written about getting people to return your call or connecting with the decision maker that have been written since World War II. Okay? So if you were to look at the number of articles or books that were written about this subject, and you kind of graphed it from the 50s, so let's start there, all the way up through the 90s. Until about the mid-1990s, you had almost nothing written about this. And then about 1994, 95, all of a sudden out of nowhere, you're getting all these articles written about it. And the number has grown and grown and grown up until, the present day. Well, here's what's interesting. In about 1993 was when the phone companies introduced voicemail. And it was voicemail that you could get on your phone, on your dial tone. Before then, you used to have these giant servers, these really expensive servers that had voicemail that was just for the building. And only the biggest companies had that. But also out of nowhere, for an extra 10 or 15 or 20 bucks a month, you had voicemail. And the minute voicemail came up, nobody could get a hold of anyone anymore, particularly not salespeople. So it became a big problem. People started writing about it. So let's kind of analyze that, because this interesting graph is where the answer to all our problem lies. So from 1994, 95 on, we used voicemail. Before 1994, what did we use? Well, we used this pink piece of paper. Do you remember this? It's called the While You Were Out slip. And until 1994, 93, that's what we used. It was very simple. You would call and you would say to somebody, my name is so-and-so, I'm with this company, could you have Jim call me back? And you would get a call back. So what we've discovered is that the secret to leaving a voicemail is the secret that's always been around until voicemail came out, which was to be very brief. So what we recommend is that you get one of these pink pieces of paper in front of you and you leave your voicemail as though you were filling this out. So I say, hi, it's Matthew Lamprels. I'm with Sales Wings. The number is 801-983-5900, and I'll be in the office till about 5 tonight. You notice I did my phone number slow, so I didn't leave it twice, and I just filled out this sheet. However, I want to point out that there are parts of this sheet you shouldn't use, so let's do this again. Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm with Acme. My number is 212-555-1718. If you could please call me back, I'd appreciate it. The rest of this message, the rest of this pink slip, by the way, I like to think of it as kind of the red velvet rope portion of this pink piece of paper. If you've been to the clubs or been to big cities or even seen it on TV, there are restaurants and clubs that you can't get into because they have a red velvet rope, so only certain people are allowed in. Voicemail is the very same way. After about one sentence beyond your name, your phone number, and your company, you aren't given permission to use the rest of that slip. So, hi, it's Sarah with Acme. It's 212-555-1718. I'll be in the office till 4:30. Hang up the phone. That's what gets voicemails returned. It's absolutely amazing. If you call the right time of day, You're influencing that one of the 4 factors. And then your message is very crisp and succinct. You don't sound like everyone else. You don't leave your phone number twice. You don't leave a commercial on there. You're not leaving this Mad Lib version of a voicemail that everyone else is leaving. And you're just to the point. It's Sarah with Acme. It's 212-555-1718. I'll be in the office till 4:30. Okay, so let's just look at this a little bit further. I want to point a few things out. First of all, remember that the further you move down this pink slip, the more risk you have. So at the top of this pink piece of paper, I don't like calling it a pink slip because that means something else, but the while you were out slip, the further you move down that, the higher your risk. So you start filling out information on the bottom, you start to add several sentences to your message, you're kind of in restricted territory. In fact, I like to think of it this way. I am allowed to leave one sentence. And then if I know the person, I'm allowed maybe 2 or 3 more sentences. And then if I know the person and I know that I have something that's positive for them, like I'm going to give them a raise, or I know I can update on something they wanted, or we have the new product line out that they've been asking us about, then I'm allowed to add a few more sentences, and I'll get my voicemail returned. If I want my voicemails returned, I got to follow this slip. Just your name, your company, your phone number, 1 sentence. That as long as I'm leaving that during golden voicemailers, I'm going to get my voicemails returned, and I'm not allowed to use the rest of the sheet unless I know that person. And if I do, then I can add 1 or 2 more sentences depending on whether or not I know them and whether or not there's something positive in it for them. I'm not asking them to make a decision. I'm not making this a one-way street of information. I'm not making this a Mad Lib version of voicemail. I don't sound like a salesperson. I just stick to this pink piece of paper, and it worked for 50 years, and guess what? It still works. It's what gets voicemails returned. So my name is Matthew Lampers. I run a company called SalesWings. At SalesWings, we believe that there are tips and tricks to selling that you need to be able to remember in order to implement them. They should be simple. And the simplest version of anything is either one picture or the back of a napkin. And the one picture back of a napkin thing we want you to remember about voicemail, so you can know that you can leave messages that you know are going to be returned, is to use the while you're out pad. Leave your name and your number 1 time and your company and a 1-line message about getting your call returned or that you'll be around. And you're going to break through that red brick wall of voicemail, get to the decision maker, get to the revenue, hit the quota that you've been trying to hit, and you're going to be able to build your pipeline because you can connect with people when you call them. So good luck. I know you're going to do great. All of our clients do great when they do this simple trick. Share it with others, and have fun.